Who else besides the government is interested in this type of information? Let's call them the commercial interests. What the commercial interests want to do is to sell you something. They want to know what you like and what you dislike and where you shop and what medicines you take, and that information is then analyzed and gathered and evaluated. And the more they know, the better able they are to target specific products or services that you might want to buy. These tactics are annoying, but most people have come to accept this as part of everyday life. Except for me. I won't use a Vons shopping cart because then they know things about what I buy, and I just don't like that, how many beers I buy every week. And I'd rather not have them know that information. But most people don't mind. The type of privacy intrusion that offends nearly everyone and that is in fact quite dangerous is when your bank gives supposedly confidential account information to its sales force in order to sell you other products. This is known as cross-selling. For example, banks are now able to sell a variety of different products such as insurance and mutual funds and stocks, all of which might be more profitable for them than simply selling simply handling your checking and your savings account. What the bank wants to do is to get you to take money out of your CD and out of your savings account where there's a low margin and low profit and get you to buy an insurance product or a mutual fund where there's larger commissions and fees. So the bank computers analyze the information about you, how much you have in your account, what your spending patterns are, and how much you have available each month, and they give that information to their inside or their outside sales force. I think that the danger here is that our financial institutions offer themselves to us as our trusted advisors, and while nobody expects that account information will be held confidential, the general belief is that banking records will be kept in confidence unless there's a subpoena from the government or a court demands that they be turned over. But the fact is that unlike countries which have a law concerning confidentiality, the law in the US declares that customer records are the property of the bank, and there are no practical restrictions on what the bank's allowed to do with the information. It can sell it, it can distribute it publicly, or use it for its own marketing purposes. I'm concerned about these practices because I don't want my financial records and information about what I own to be accessed by anyone without my permission. And I don't want the bank to call my 85-year-old mother pretending to offer her advice and really soliciting her into investments where she might lose her money. The privacy plans which we create are intended specifically to protect against these type of activities by the banks and by anyone else who wants to use this information to claim and to gain an unfair advantage over you. Who else besides the government and these commercial interests wants to know more about you? Maybe you have a business competitor or a nosy neighbor or maybe there's an employee of yours who wants to find out more information about you. We can make it more concrete, and let's say there's an ex-spouse who you were divorced from 6 years ago, and he or she may now have a good reason to keep tabs on you, because if you're doing better financially than you were at the time of the divorce, maybe he or she wants to go back into court to modify the divorce decree or the support decree or the property division. So we have an ex-spouse who wants to know detailed financial information about you, where your accounts are and how much real estate you have. It's also a little scary that divorce attorneys are now advising unhappy spouses to run an asset check before the divorce papers are filed. Quietly find out all the bank accounts and the account numbers and the balances before the papers are served, because once the spouse is served with the lawsuit, money tends to go flying all over the place. So they say, get a good snapshot right before you file. So we can see that there's ex-spouses and current spouses and business competitors. But to me, the greatest concern and the biggest problem is caused by lawyers looking for somebody to sue. Lawyers can cause the greatest degree of privacy intrusion and pose the most serious threat to you of financial injury. What I mean by this is that a lawyer wants financial information about you because he wants to know whether you are worth suing. That means if he sues you, will he be able to collect the judgment and get paid? And he wants to know this before he decides to take the case. If you have money that can be identified and reached, then you become an attractive lawsuit target, and I'll show you exactly how this works. Most of the lawsuits that we see are filed by contingent fee attorneys, and that means the attorney has agreed with the client that they'll take 33 or 40% of the amount of the recovery, any recovery that they get from the defendant. But if they don't win the case or win the case but aren't able to collect anything, then they get 33% of nothing, and that's a fast way to go out of business. Contingent fee lawyers hate to lose cases, but even worse than that is winning a case and then finding out that the defendant has no reachable or available assets. So when a potential client goes to a lawyer to ask about suing someone, the first and sometimes the only thing the lawyer wants to know is, does the defendant have any assets? Note the question isn't, what did the defendant do wrong? It's, does he have any money? If he has enough money to make it worthwhile to file the case, then the lawyer can always think of some theory of liability to tie in that particular defendant. The liability is always the easy part of every case. The real issue is, can we find a defendant who has money to pay a judgment? So after he meets with a potential client, and here's the facts of the case, the lawyer prepares a list of every conceivable defendant, and he has the investigator run a check on each one of them. If they find someone with enough real estate equity or savings to make the case worthwhile, then the lawsuit gets filed.